For more on the political debate, let's bring in Sean Sullivan and Michael Graham. Sean is a congressional reporter for The Washington Post. He's in Washington. And Michael is a CBSN political contributor and columnist for the Boston Herald. He's in Manchester, New Hampshire. Welcome to you both. Let me start with this. It has been 13 years since the federal assault weapons ban lapsed, which likely would have outlawed some of the firearms and magazines used in this shooting. Now, Senator Blumenthal wants it renewed. I wonder, Sean, what does the gun debate look like in Congress at this point?
Well, right now it looks pretty much the way it has looked for the past few years, even dating back to the aftermath of the Newtown shooting. You have a lot of Democrats today with very, very strong words similar to what we heard from Senator Blumenthal, who are saying we need to act, we need to do something. On the other hand, you have Republican lawmakers who are not on board with that, who don't think that this or other attacks like this are a reason or an impetus to reopen the debate and perhaps pass more gun control laws. So it really is sort of at this logjam right now where you have a lot of people on one side who feel very strongly, a lot of people on the other side who feel very strongly, and no signs that that's going to change, and then therefore no signs that we're really going to see any new action legislatively as a result of this latest tragedy.
Michael, how do you see it?
Well, one of the problems that people advocating, for example, bringing back the assault weapons ban have is that there was no decrease in crime when the assault weapons ban was in place, and there was no demonstrable increase in shootings with those, quote, assault weapons, which are really just regular weapons that have scary attachments and things on them after they came back. The data just don't back it. I should also probably add at this point that it is not possible for a typical citizen to buy a machine gun or an automatic weapon. It's just not possible. Out of the 235 million or so guns that are owned by Americans, fewer than 700,000 of them are fully automatic or machine guns. They all have to be specially licensed by the federal government. There are great restrictions on this. So the gun that the shooter used in Las Vegas is already illegal. And that comes to the core of the question that the NRA and the gun people keep asking when people to suggest let's have new gun laws. They say, tell me how your law would stop the crimes you're trying to stop. And thus far, I don't know that people have given a satisfactory answer to build any momentum.
Let me ask you, Sean, the House is set to vote on a bill this week that would allow easier access to gun silencers. Do you expect any change in the political environment for that measure?
Well, we'll see. We're seeing some Democrats today push back on that measure that was advanced out of a House committee earlier this year, and they're saying, look, we should not be voting on this. Look at what happened in Las Vegas, and especially in light of that, we shouldn't be doing this. So far, I don't see a lot of appetite from Republicans to back off this particular measure, but we'll see, and we'll see if Speaker Ryan and other leaders in the House look at the situation and say, well, hold on, now's not the time to necessarily do this, or whether they press ahead with this. And as you mentioned, this is a measure that would make it easier to buy firearm silencers. It would also ease some of the restrictions in terms of transferring firearms across state lines. And so you have a lot of gun control advocates and a lot of Democrats saying that this is a very dangerous law and one that they think could make shootings like what we saw in Las Vegas more dangerous and harder to combat in the future.
Yeah, Michael, I'm curious your take on that particular question of the gun silencers issue, because, of course, those who would advocate for stricter gun control measures might say, well, for a gun enthusiast or a gun rights supporter, someone who enjoys the sport of shooting, what difference does a silencer make necessarily in the enjoyment of that?
And what I would do is I would urge people to read the Washington Post piece today, the fact check, where they went through this issue today, and it explains how they're actually suppressors. It's still about as loud as a jackhammer when you fire the gun, and so it's that or an earpiece. But I'll be honest, I think there's something bigger here. For people in the Second Amendment community, because they've done so well politically, their candidates tend to win because their voters are really energized. I thought it was interesting, one of the politicians you quoted earlier said, we've got to take on the gun industry. If this were the gun industry, it would be 99-0 against them. It's the millions and millions of voters who care about this issue. But I think they really need to think about issues like this. The suppressor issue, these little side issues about the magazines, by continuing to fight those as though nothing happened, I think they'd be much smarter to take a page out of Donald Trump's book today. He talked about the loss people experienced, how we can't even begin to feel it, and about how desperately they need to be comforted. He talked about the human cost of America's current gun laws. And I think if the Second Amendment community addressed that, acknowledged that pain, and said, here are some things that we can do, we can support. We're going to be proactive instead of dragging our feet on small stuff like suppressors, I think they'd be doing themselves a political favor. So
you think that there perhaps could be better, I don't want to say coming together, that's the wrong, but there could be perhaps a little bit more dialogue when it comes to these other issues?
I think that there are places that you could see cooperation, particularly in the area of mental illness. The problem is that the Second Amendment community believes, and I think they're pretty much right, that most of the people on the other side want total confiscation of guns. They want to go to the Australian model and basically have virtually no private ownership of guns. So they're scared that if they crack the door, that they'll run right in, that there will be no good faith compromise. And I will say that President Obama's decision to act unilaterally on some mental issues involving Social Security recipients highlighted this distrust. What we need is some trust. I don't know how to build it, but a couple of political leaders on both sides of that issue could start building it if they'd stop with the you have blood on your hands and you want to take away my gun, and maybe come to someplace a little more in the middle. From
a political perspective, Sean, our Major Garrett described a moment ago how Democrats may have some leverage, politically speaking, soon on the debt ceiling and federal budget. Do you have a sense of what Democrats want to prioritize in their negotiations?
Well, I think, in the aftermath of this shooting, I think gun control is a big priority for many of them. And it comes at a time when President Trump has opened this new dialogue with Democrats on Capitol Hill. He's looked at his relationship with some of the Republican leaders, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan. They haven't been able to get a lot done. And so he's basically concluded, look, if I work with, Nancy Pelosi, if I work with Chuck Schumer a little bit more, maybe I can get some more done. And as you mentioned, they did strike a deal on the debt ceiling that gave the Democrats what they wanted and gave Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan the opposite of what they wanted. But it remains to be seen whether they can make any progress on this issue. When you look at the way that Donald Trump campaigned and you look at the early months of his presidency, he has been somebody who has been pretty staunchly on the side of gun rights. He's been somebody who the NRA counts as a strong ally. And so if he changes that position at all, if he takes a different approach, if he shows some openness to new gun control laws and a new gun control debate, I think it might, attract some Democrats, but I think it might also anger a lot of his base and anger people at the NRA and people who have supported him and looked at him as somebody who has been a pretty fierce defender of gun rights. So we'll see. This president has been unpredictable, and we don't know what he's going to do in this debate. We don't know which direction he's going to go. But I think both sides are watching, perhaps nervously, to see which way he leans on this one.
Michael, I'm curious, your thoughts. You think it's too risky for President Trump politically to work with Democrats on this issue?
I'll be honest with you. I think, and I'd love to hear Sean from this, I think if you're a Democrat in a purple place like New Hampshire, where I am right now, New Hampshire's people like their guns. You go to Indiana. I don't know that I want to be a Democrat in Indiana who's taking on, the NRA Second Amendment crowd. There's a reason why you don't see political action. That's because there are a lot of mines in this minefield for everybody, particularly Democrats in purple districts.
All right. We'll continue to watch it closely. Michael Graham and Sean Sullivan, thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you.